This was home to a wealthy merchant. His name was Joseph Pemberton. He made his money importing Madeira wine from Spain. And this is our National Park gift shop and bookstore now. The next smaller building that you'll see in a moment with 2 windows on the second floor facing us, this is called Newhall. Newhall was comparable to our Pentagon. This is where the very first War Department was located. They had a staff of 12 men and a budget of $5,000 a year in those days. It's a military museum now. Carpenter's Hall, that's the most important building on the National Park. That was built in 1727. And this is where our first Continental Congress met to discuss the grievances they had with King George III.
Can you walk around in there?
Oh, this one is the only one that's privately owned, so that will be open tomorrow.
Wow, that's good.
The only thing open on the National Park. This is the building where folks began shouting, "No taxation without representation. Give me liberty, give me death." This is where the revolution
really?
started.
Right.
I've got goosebumps then when they said that.
Now you can't see it quite yet, but on the left-hand corner there's a red brick house coming up. It's called the Todd House. Normally when the National Park is operating, you could tour through the home. It was home to Jonathan and Dolly Todd. Jonathan Todd was a colonial lawyer. He believed that by staying in Philadelphia during the yellow fever epidemic, he'd become wealthy writing wills for the dying population. Well, we lost 1/3 of our population that summer, and he was among them. So his wife returns to the city, and she's got to support herself, so she starts renting out rooms here in the home. Through a tenant, she meets and marries her second husband, James Madison. He goes on to become the 4th president of the United States.
Wow.
Now, folks look down on her for this. Boo. They felt that she didn't wait a respectable mourning period in between her husbands. You know, a year was good, more was better. She kind of jumped on James and married him within 7 months of John Todd's death. And she wasn't helping her public image any. She'd smoke his cigars in public. She'd run around town showing her ankles, you know, wearing probably didn't do that kind of stuff in those days.
Well, that does it all the
First
time.
lady in history that held that title, First Lady. She coined the phrase, she believed the president's wife deserved a better title than the president's wife. She also saved Washington's portrait from the executive mansion fire during the War of 1812.
Okay.
Now the next area that we're going to go through is Society Hill. And it gets its name because originally this was 100 acres of land that William Penn had deeded to a group of gentlemen called the Society of Free Traders. But this is the largest collection of colonial homes and churches anywhere in the United States. Coming up on the right-hand side, we have the Philadelphia Contribution Ship. And this is our nation's oldest working fire insurance company. It was started by Ben Franklin back in 1752.
Franklin
Now, right here, this one.
Franklin Agency. Oh, that's
Now, how
lovely.
this worked is you'd pay him a premium and he'd give you a plaque to mount on your house. The plaque was your proof of insurance. Now, in the event of a fire, if the fire department saw the plaque, they'd hurry up and put your fire out because they got paid for it. You know. The irony in the whole plaque system thing was the plaque that he gave you to mount on your home as proof of insurance was made of wood.
And it was the first to burn.
Now, over here on the right-hand side, you're going to start seeing rows of houses here. Between the first 2 front doors, you're going to see a little black oval plaque. And these are from the Pennsylvania Historical Commission. You'll see a lot of these in the neighborhood. They certify that the properties are at least 175 years old and that the facades of the properties are remaining 85% historically accurate. Now there's a large property coming up on the corner with the closed shutters. Now this is the Episcopal Diocese, but originally it was home to a physician. His name was Caspar Wister. He was the man who tutored Meriwether Lewis on medicine and anatomy in preparation for the Lewis and Clark expedition. In their travels, they discovered a plant that they'd named after him. Wisteria was named after Caspar Wister.
We know that.
We have Old St. Mary's Catholic Church coming up next. It was originally built in 1763. When it was enlarged in 1810, it became Philadelphia's very first basilica. Commodore John Barry, the father of the American Navy, is buried in their cemetery. Also, the late Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis' great-great-grandfather, Michel Bouvier, is buried there as well. Now, all the churches, they're all active. They all still have services every Sunday. And you'll notice they all have their own cemeteries. In the colonial days, the religious cemeteries were the only cemeteries. You couldn't buy a plot like folks have to do now. In the colonial days, if you weren't a member of an area religious order at the time of your death, none of them were going to let you be buried in their cemeteries, regardless of the religion. And at that point, it would have been a mass grave. You would have been buried in the potter's field. So, okay, Chip.
An acorn.
An acorn film. Is that luck?
No, isn't it a pigeon?
Oh, I got hooked on by a bird many years ago until it started
I
running.
think it's that flat. I don't think mine's going to work. No, that's why I didn't. Well, that's what they reckon if a pigeon's
Yeah, we have a very short row of homes coming up on the right-hand side. There are three houses in the row, but they are 300 years of architecture. The first house, starting with the black door, that was built in the 1860s. The burgundy door with the wreath was built in the 1760s. And then the last one was built in the 1960s.
So 17, 18, 19.
18, 17, 19.
18, 17. Wow.
Now, here's an awesome house to tour through, but unfortunately it's only
It's
open
shut.
Thursday through Sunday.
this
This is the only freestanding mansion in the neighborhood, and by that I mean it's a single home. It's not part of a row as everything else is here. And this was home to Philip Singh Physic. Oh, Chip. He was the father of American surgery. He lived here from 1815 to 1837. He invented things like catgut sutures and the stomach pump. He was also called Soda's Pop. He would flavor carbonated water with sugarcane and black cherry and prescribe it to you if you had an upset stomach. They would deliver the prescription to your house for maybe $1.30 a month back in those days. It's awesome inside. It's got all the original furniture from the time period.
that'd be
And 95% of the time when you knock on the door, Dale Physic answers, and that's Dr. Physic's great-great-great-grandson. He gives most of the tours in there. And
And he lives in there.
yeah, and you can get a bottle of the pop too while you're on the tour.
But he doesn't open tomorrow.
No.
Maybe if we knock on the door.
he might answer.
Chip.
Delancey Street here. Delancey Street is the second oldest continuously lived on street in Philadelphia, second to Elfress Alley.
Everything's got a history to it.
Now there's a house down here that I usually point out, but I'm sure it's going to be kind of hard to see in the dark. A lot of these people, they put little information in the windows for the folks walking through the neighborhood. This house here with the yellow shutters, I always point out, it's not so bad, you can see it. Built 1750 for a ship captain named John Smith. You know, and a lot of folks do that just for the folks walking through the neighborhood, so you can learn about the properties as you go along the way.
That's a good idea.
Now there's a big yellow church in the middle of the cemetery over here on the right, and that's the old Pine Street Presbyterian Church. It was built in 1768. During the Revolution, the British burned the altar and the pews out of that church. They actually turned it into a stable. They kept the horses inside. They had no respect for any religion other than their own.
Who was that?
The British.
Really?
Yeah.
They were pretty bad.
It was restored beautifully after the Revolution, and it wound up becoming a major stop on the Underground Railroad.
Was it a Catholic church? Sorry?
Presbyterian.
Presbyterian.
Now here in the trees,
all
this
of 'em.
brick steeple, this is St. Peter's. This is an Episcopal church built in 1761. The steeple is 182 feet tall, and for almost 80 years, this was the tallest structure in the colony of Pennsylvania.
Don't see much of the trees, but
You see those little mirrors up there?
Yeah.
They're called busybodies. You see, they're wrought iron on the outside, but on the inside, if you were looking out the window, the opposite side that you can't see are mirrors. One pane reflects who's at your front door. Another pane reflects who's coming down the street. A third pane reflects who's coming up the street.
Wow.
So you could, from your second floor window, you could look out see who's at your front door, who's
Yeah.
what, and what's going on down the street without having to put
Stick
your
your
head
head
out
out
the window.
with the-
Right.
What a good idea.
You can see when the tax collector's coming or.
Alright, okay.
Now, in this first house right here, between the first and second floor, you're going to see the wooden plaque there. That was Franklin's fire insurance marker.
Oh, there
The
it is.
four crossed hands for a fireman's hold. That was for security. Over here, you'll see a different fire insurance marker with a tree on it.
On it.
Now, for 32 years, Ben Franklin had the only insurance company in town. So it was his way or the highway. And he happened to believe that trees were a liability. You know, they could attract lightning and in turn your home would burn, so he wouldn't sell you insurance if you had trees. And in 1784, the Green Tree Group started up. And that was their little niche in the business, was that they were insuring properties with living trees, hence the name Green Tree Group.
Oh, okay.
Turn up Lombard. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I like to look at the features and I like the inside, what they look like. And,
Rooms and how big they are.
yeah,
And the little windows.
Now we're about a
seats.
block from the Delaware River. And again, the Delaware was the major port where all the goods came into the colonial city. So this brick structure sitting smack dab in the middle of the road right here, this is called the Head House Shambles. And it was here that everything, dry goods, livestock, produce,
Yeah.
slaves were brought here to be auctioned off.
Really?
They use this on the weekends still. On Saturdays they have a craft fair.
Markets? Yeah.
And then on Sundays there's a farmer's market.
So what
You know the surface of the road. Yeah. And this is what a lot of folks confuse with cobblestone. This is actually Belgian rock. Belgian rock was originally used as ballast, as weight in the ships in the colonial days. Each of these stones weighs between 15 and 18 pounds. Now, when the ships would pull into our docks and take on cargo, this is what was left behind. They decided to pave the roads with it because, as a material, it was free and there was more arriving every day. Compared to cobblestone, this is actually quite smooth. Cobblestone's uneven, it's round, and then like riverbed rock. This is actually the South Street and House area. It's a very popular shopping and restaurant district.
What's the name of the shop?
they're everywhere.
They're all there. They're all following us.
I told Bob, we saw that yesterday. Everywhere.
Cutie. Little baby looking
Wavy.
with like
Just
food coming out of his mouth.
Now, this whole neighborhood in the late 50s, early 60s, this was awful. This was more boarded up in abandoned homes than lived in homes. It was so bad that the federal government literally gave the city of Philadelphia an ultimatum. We'll kick in the behind.
Yeah.
Fix it or no bicentennial celebration. So that would have been a huge embarrassment not having our 200th anniversary. And the city would have lost a lot of money. Back in those days, our city planner was the late Edmund Bacon, Kevin Bacon, the actor, his dad.
All right.
So he gets permission to start seizing properties through eminent domain. And then he auctions them off for between $1,000 and $15,000. He gave folks 10 years to restore the property. And the only thing you had to restore to within 85% of the historic was the facade. The inside, you could do whatever you want, make as modern as you want.
Yeah.
So once you got the facade to within 85%, you earned the little black historical certification plaque. Okay. Now once that was on your house, that's when your 10-year tax abatement started. So for the next 10 years, you only paid taxes on what you got the house for at the auction. Could have been as little as $1,000. You know, and that really turned the neighborhood around. In that process, there were probably 1,800 homes that were irreparably damaged. So of course, when they got knocked down, developers purchased the land.
Yeah.
And you'll see little clusters of modern stuff throughout the neighborhood.
Gee, that was sounded really close.
There's a house over here that's one of my favorite. The one after, the first one after this little street right here.
Yeah.
My favorite to peek through
Yes.
because it's got a great sunroom in the back.
Oh, yeah. You can just see the conservatory, yeah.
Okay.
It's an old.
Got it.
Ships snorting.
Yeah. They've got their own graves. That's a lovely big church.
No.
Going past.
St. Peter's Church.
Wants to go past. Another one.
Oh, you just go around the block. Yeah, that's the bird.
How old's Chip the horse?
She's about 10.
Uh-huh.
Now there's 3 little short houses here in this row. These are great examples of what would have been considered a working class colonial home. The 3 short ones here with the flags.
Yeah.
These are Trinity houses. Trinity houses primarily were built by Quakers. Your first floor is dedicated to the Father, the second the Son, the third the Holy Spirit. Quakers believed to build above that, you thought that you were above God.
Fair enough.
I know, but they look like
They had their funny hats and that, yeah. They were like the first people that came over, weren't they, on the Mayflower.
Look at this bit. Yeah, look at
Can you still do this?
I'll show her on video.
on the ground over here, in front of the Range Rover, you're going to see a marble block next to the lamppost there, after the car. That's an old carriage step. That was to aid the women, right there. That was to aid the women into getting in and out of the carriages, so that the neighbors wouldn't see your ankles.
Really? So good how they've kept it all. So I wonder what houses are for a lot, for the cost of a house.
Now these bulkhead wooden doorways along the ground here, that's the only way you had to get into your kitchen in the
Seen that in a
1700s.
lot of movies.
No stairway inside of your house to get there.
Crawl space.
We as women would have been doing all the work in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Your dress was down below your ankles and you were
Had to get down
putting
there.
over an open flame.
Oh.
Occasionally the edge of a dress would catch fire.
Yep.
So the lack of stairs inside the house prevented women from running through the house in a panic, catching the rest of the house on fire. There was only one way in and out of the kitchen through those doors.
Really?
Hey, Chip,
Little motorbike.
hey, Chip. Oh,
What's
He
his
wants to
out?
go home.
this is his only ride of the day. He had off to.
Oh, so he's a bit cranky,
Just
is
a
he?
bit of a jerk, anyway.
Is he?
It's not
Yeah,
his
they
fault.
get
It's
all
his
different
breed.
personalities, don't they?
He's a thoroughbred cross with a Percheron.
Oh,
was
okay.
somebody's bad idea in Yeah, he looks pretty, but that's about it.
Okay.
How much would one of these houses go for?
Nowadays, they're way so expensive. The little Trinity houses back there, the working class colonial homes, they have 5 rooms in them. 1 on the first, or 2 on the first floor, 2 on the second,
Got
and
the
1 on the
fan
third.
on the-
And they're almost $250,000 if it's historically
whiz.
certified. Now there's a house that's coming up here I like to point out. because it's about 50 years old.
All right.
Okay.
But it's attached to, and it's right smack dab in the row. It's built in the row. The house that we're coming up to with the blue shutters was built in the 1820s with the red for sale sign.
Yeah.
And then you have the 50-year-old house. And then the house after was built in the 1790s. And this is attached. And they don't have a problem with it as long as it's brick. It's not allowed to resemble, and it's not allowed to be taller than the colonials it's attached to.
Okay.
Now we're coming up to a house that recently sold for $4.5 million.
$4.5 million.
And there used to be a big pothole up here.
Oh, the history.
It's the one with the black shutters and the sculpted bushes here.
Yeah.
This is a privately owned home, but Dolly and James Madison happened to live in it for 16 months before they went to Washington, D.C.
$4.5 million.
I believe the most expensive home in this neighborhood is about $13 million, and this is the second most affluent neighborhood in the city. Second to Rittenhouse.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Depending on what your preference is.
Yeah, that's right.
If you could afford
One of my favorite little Trinity houses
that
is
looked
coming
as
up
good as
here.
ours.
It was built for an engraver from Scotland named John Valance in 1792. The reason it's one of my favorites is because they have an actual garden. You know, these people pay a lot of money to live here, but most don't have a garden. You might have a little courtyard behind your house. And it's this little one right here with the blue shutters. I don't know how well you're going to see the garden in the dark, but it's right up the side of the house.
Yep.
It goes up and it wraps around the back.
Alright,
It's so
okay.
cute. Now, when William Penn originally drafted Philadelphia in 1682, these row homes that we have, they were never ever his vision for Philadelphia. He thought Philadelphia was going to be his holy experiment, that different religions would immigrate here and people were going to have land and orchards and wide open space. Obviously, things didn't work out like he planned. You know, the British come along and they started taxing people not only on how wide their houses were, but how many exposed walls you had of your home. So that forced people to attach their properties.
So they could
If you lived on the corner, you were considered wealthy because you paid for 3 walls. Ironwork and marble, they were the status symbols in the colonial days. Literally, the more stairs that led to your front door, the more ironwork that you had that adorned your property, that's how your wealth was judged, and that's where the term stepping up in society came from. Now, the tax man was allowed inside of the properties, but he couldn't touch anything. So working class people couldn't afford closets. Had he seen a closet door without touching it, he would have taxed them for having an extra room in their house.
Wow.
So this is where wooden wardrobes and armoires came in those days.
Oh, okay.
Now, when we get up here to the corner, on the left-hand side, you're going to see some really huge homes. And they were built over the course of 30 years, from the 1820s to the 1850s. Of course, we've won the revolution. So it didn't matter any longer how wide your house was, how many windows you had, the ironwork. And you'll see by the size of these houses, these people were showing off.
This will be good. What a beautiful night.
So,
Oh, he wants to go home.